You know exactly how this specific heavy exhaustion feels on a Tuesday morning. You wake up after a completely full, uninterrupted 8 hours of sleep. You physically get out of bed, but your entire body feels like it is made of lead. You look at your calendar for the day, and nothing on it is exceptionally difficult or tragic. It is just a normal day filled with completely normal, everyday adult responsibilities. But as you stare at the screen, a massive, overwhelming wave of dread washes over your entire body. You feel a deep, hollow emptiness in your chest, and you realize you have absolutely nothing left to give. Society has a very loud, incredibly dismissive diagnosis for this specific type of fatigue. They tell you that you are just being dramatic, or that this is simply what being a responsible adult feels like. They say you just need to drink more coffee, push through the slump, and stop complaining. And after hearing that narrative enough times, you slowly begin to internalize that toxic shame. You look at your deep craving for rest, and you hate yourself for being so unbelievably weak. You wonder why everyone else can seamlessly juggle their careers, social lives, and hobbies while you are completely drowning. But today, I want to offer you a completely different, heavily researched biological diagnosis. You are not weak, you are not lazy, and you are not fundamentally broken. You are suffering from a documented neurological phenomenon directly tied to your cognitive load. To understand why your brain desperately needs this rest, we have to look at your daily sensory diet. Think of your daily pool of energy exactly like the battery health of a brand new smartphone. A neurotypical brain operates like a phone running a few simple, highly efficient background apps. It slowly, predictably drains over the course of a normal 14-hour day. But your brain processes the world at a much higher, far more intense resolution. You have 50 complex, high-drain applications running simultaneously in the background of your mind. For you, attending a 1-hour meeting is not just a simple transfer of logistical information. Your brain is aggressively recording the exact micro-expressions of every single person in the room. It is processing the overlapping tension between two co-workers who secretly dislike each other. It is noticing the harsh fluorescent lighting and the highly distracting hum of the air conditioner. And most importantly, your hyperactive mirror neurons are instantly downloading the unspoken expectations placed upon you. Your nervous system immediately absorbs that heavy, frantic energy and attempts to metabolize it. Your brain is literally doing the heavy lifting of simulating everyone else's complex internal state. This is an incredible, beautiful superpower that makes you a deeply intuitive, highly effective person. But biologically speaking, it requires a massive, exhausting amount of metabolic energy to sustain. Your daily fatigue is not determined by your physical exertion. It is dictated by your sensory processing. When your nervous system has absorbed too much data, your internal RAM becomes completely full. Your brain recognizes that you are approaching a dangerous state of systemic sensory overload. But instead of resting, you force yourself to keep going by relying entirely on adrenaline and cortisol. You borrow energy from tomorrow just to survive the demands of today. You do not feel dead inside because you are secretly depressed or angry at the outside world. You feel dead inside because your brain is completely starved of actual restorative metabolic repair. When you live in this state of chronic depletion, a biological tragedy slowly happens inside your skull. The overwhelming flood of external stimuli forces your amygdala into a permanent state of fight or flight. You essentially become a highly functional survival machine, completely incapable of experiencing genuine joy. For a high-resolution brain, proper rest is not just the simple absence of doing physical work. Rest is an active, highly productive state of neurological recovery that must be deliberately designed. You are essentially running a high-performance sports car on cheap, contaminated fuel and wondering why the engine is failing. This is exactly why you can sleep for an entire weekend and still desperately need a vacation. You are not a machine that can effortlessly run in the middle of a noisy, chaotic factory floor. You are a biological organism, and your highly sensitive system strictly requires a customized protective environment. But living your life constantly apologizing for your biological limits is completely exhausting. It turns your daily existence into a highly toxic event filled with crushing, unavoidable guilt. So how do we actually bypass this heavy shame and trick your life into supporting your brain? We cannot rely on forcing yourself into a rigid, highly optimized morning routine to build more discipline. Instead, we have to use a neurological workaround called the energy audit framework. Right now, your brain views all tasks, all people, and all environments as completely equal in their energy cost. We need to physically and verbally reframe your daily inputs so your nervous system can finally breathe. First, you must completely stop tracking your time and begin aggressively tracking your cognitive drain. When you look at your calendar, a 1-hour phone call looks exactly the same as 1 hour of organizing your desk. You must state your biological reality using the precise language of metabolic cost. You must label the phone call as a high-drain event and the organizing as a low-drain recovery task. This sounds incredibly simple, but labeling tasks this way engages a completely different dynamic in your prefrontal cortex. It actively proves to your subconscious that you are finally honoring your biology, not ignoring it. Second, you need to completely redefine what a successful, productive day actually looks like for your brain. Your nervous system refuses to wake up energized because it knows it is walking right into a trap. So you must deliberately curate microenvironments that act as a restorative niche throughout your day. You intentionally find a quiet room, a parked car, or a softly lit space for 10 minutes between high-drain events. You are not trying to be the loud, energetic superhero of your entirely chaotic office space. Your only goal is to completely unplug your senses without feeling the need to constantly produce output. By making these breaks aggressively protective, you guarantee that your system never reaches total failure. This completely neutralizes the subconscious fear of the painful, exhausting sensory burnout. Your brain realizes there is no immediate danger of drowning in noise, so it finally lowers its guard. And this is where the actual biological magic of your newly designed life finally happens. Once you introduce a restorative niche, your brain gets a pure hit of parasympathetic calm. This is the biological signal that tells your nervous system it is finally safe to begin cellular repair. That tiny rush of safety acts exactly like a cooling agent on your overstimulated, overheated engine. You completely bypass the heavy burnout simply by deliberately managing your daily environmental exposure. The absolute hardest part of designing a sustainable life is the deep, suffocating guilt you feel when saying no. You sit alone in your protected space, actively hating yourself, believing you're letting people down. But that heavy, familiar guilt actually makes your necessary biological recovery significantly worse. It adds an incredibly dense layer of emotional shame to a process that is purely maintenance. You must completely stop treating your boundaries like a deep moral failure or an insult to others. Your brain is just an incredibly powerful receiver that simply cannot hold the weight of the entire world. It is fiercely trying to protect you from the intense metabolic exhaustion of chronic people-pleasing. When you finally understand this truth, the heavy shame naturally begins to dissolve and wash away. You finally stop fighting a brutal, utterly unwinnable war against your own limited energy reserves. The next time you find yourself staring at an overflowing schedule, just take a deep breath. Acknowledge the heavy sensory load that your high-resolution mind is currently being forced to carry. Do not try to forcefully shove yourself through the fatigue, and do not hate yourself for feeling weak. Set your boundaries, audit your energy, and hand the heavy burden of performing completely over. Then, give yourself radical permission to fiercely protect your quiet, restorative sanctuary. Trade the massive, overwhelming noise of an exhausted life for the profound, beautiful clarity of a sustainable one. Let that quiet space slowly unfreeze your paralyzed system and gently bring you back to baseline. You do not need to perfectly perform constant productivity for a loud, rapidly moving, highly demanding world. You just need to learn how to gently navigate the beautiful, highly sensitive machinery of your own unordinary mind. Start incredibly small today. Forgive yourself entirely for needing the rest, and I will see you in the next one.